You've taken a wrong turn down Creep Street.
Citizens of the Milky Way, my name is Dylan Hackworth.
I'm Maureen Bogey.
And this is Creep Street. And ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to the newly married Lord and Lady of Creep Street.
That is right.
We finally made it official.
We finally did the dang tang.
That's right.
We went for it. Thank you guys so much for your kind words.
Yes, thank you.
Your messages, your thoughts, your vibes, all of it. It's so appreciated for real.
Absolutely. And we told this to our Patreon listeners too on our bonus episode. But obviously, planning a wedding, as wonderful as it is also, it's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's stressful. It's a lot. Planning a wedding during a pandemic is tenfold.
Is also a lot.
Plans we've had on the books for a long time had fell through numerous times right before the wedding. You know, for obvious reasons, people need to stay healthy.
Right.
It was not easy. And
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, I got to marry my best friend.
Me too.
And I could not be happier. And let me tell you something, Creep Street. We want to just thank you for all your love, just your comments. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, we've only been doing this since March, and to just know that we've got listeners already that just, you know, it really warms our hearts. You were there in spirit.
Yes.
And we could really feel you there, and we want to say thank you to all of our listeners.
And, you know, especially because we made such a big deal out of getting enough 5-star ratings to get married.
Absolutely.
There genuinely was a time when I was like, Dylan, we can't postpone because
of reviews.
This would be so hard to explain to the Creep Street Homeowners Association. They'd be so confused. They'd be like, we gave you the reviews. Give us the marriage.
That's right. Give us the marriage. Give people what they want.
So thank God it worked out. Everybody wins. Everybody won. It seriously was such a beautiful day.
It was.
Huge thank you to our friends, our family, especially our parents.
Yes.
For doing so much. You know, I was planning, gosh darn it, guys. I really was planning this whole time on doing a ritual game on Halloween night. Doing some sort of silly kind of silly ritual game with Dylan when we were both a little drunk or something, and it just you guys, I hate to say it just didn't happen.
Time got away from us.
It just didn't happen. We are so sorry, but we are gonna do a ritual game. We are sticking to the promise I made in Ritual Games 2, playing for keeps.
That's right.
We just don't know when, but just keep an eye. We will. It's gonna happen.
That's right. Well, before we get started, as always, follow us on Twitter at Creep Street Pod, Facebook, Instagram at Creep Street Podcast. If you'd like to support this show and get a lot of extra goodies, go to patreon.com/Creep Street Podcast.
Yes.
And baby, let me read to you the names of our Patreon subscribers at the $10 level.
People, listen up. This is the elite. The elite. Do you hear me?
Of course, the Dream, James Watkins. The Finnish Face, Via Longfist. The British Bonebreaker, Bex Martin. The vivacious Vicky McHugh, the tenacious Teresa Hackworth, the madman Marcus Hall, the heartbreak kid Chris Hackworth, the oh-so-suave Sean Richardson, the notorious Nicholas Barker, and the terrifying Taylor Lashman. Oh, that's right. If you would like to count yourself amongst the Creep Street elite, just go to www.patreon.com/Creep Street Podcast. There's all sorts. There's there's different tiers. You know.
Oh my God.
Get what you want. Get what you need, baby.
It's honestly, it's like perfect for whatever you need it to be. You know what? It's like we are giving you guys content at every level, surprise content throughout. So even if you don't want to give to the full amount, or even if you don't want to be our top tier, we understand.
Absolutely. Even at the $2 tier, you still get to be a part. You get the one-time shout-out. You get to be a part of the Discord community, and you get random content drops every month. There's some for everybody, baby.
Yeah.
You're gonna get bang for your buck. So, Maureen, what are we fucking talking about today?
Okay, thank you so much for asking, because everyone's been yapping. They're all saying, okay, what are you gonna do now that October's over, okay? What are you gonna do?
You think scary just stops?
Exactly. They're like, how could you possibly do this? You know what you should probably do for your next episode? Something not scary at all.
What do you think? 11 months out of the year, we do, what is this, a golfing podcast?
Yeah, geez, Louise. My last name might be Bogey, but that's just a coincidence. We are talking about Elizabeth Bathory and deadly beauty trends.
This word of warning, now I'm sure a lot of you probably are familiar with Bathory, knew she wasn't pleasant, but the depth of cruelty is horrifying.
Truly is some real evil, dark, nasty stuff.
Just so our listeners know, there's going to be some rather horrible descriptions of torture and violence in this episode, so just brace yourself for that.
Yes, but we will give a little word of warning.
We'll give a little word
before we do. So nothing, super crude or graphic.
Yes.
Will be said just out of the blue. So,
right.
So,
we'll give you a
don't
warning
worry about
before
that.
we get to the shit.
And then after we talk about Elizabeth Bathory, we will talk about deadly beauty trends throughout the years.
Oh, that's right.
And you may be wondering, how do these two connect? Okay, we're going to get into it right now, so I'm going to answer your question.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Consider this Sephora for sadists.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Also, I had to go to Sephora before we got married. I spent $150
on makeup.
But I mean, you wouldn't know it. I left with the same, gosh darn it, it's so expensive, guys. There are a bunch of different sources that I used for today's episode. So many that it's too many to list here, but some of the main ones, an article on medium.com by someone named Libby Jane Charleston. That article is a little bit more to do with the deadly beauty trends later on, not so much Elizabeth Bathory. But for Elizabeth Bathory, I used BBC, I used Encyclopedia Britannica, History Channel, and then there's a couple YouTube channels, Biographics, and same thing with Infographics.
Yeah.
So there you go. So Elizabeth Bathory, she was a Hungarian noblewoman born in 1560. She was related to the King of Poland, who was also the Grand Duke of Lithuania.
Okay.
And she was also related to the Prince of Transylvania. And as a child, Elizabeth went through a lot of medical problems, which probably came from the fact that her parents were first cousins.
Yikes.
Okay, going back to royal inbreeding.
Quick note, a couple episodes, Codex Gigas.
Yes.
We're talking about Rudolph II. He was the guy, he was like obsessed with it, and his brother ended up taking over. So he was also part of the Habsburg family. I forgot to mention that. He had that big old Habsburg job.
So that's another connection.
Yes.
And Elizabeth Bathory, she actually later on in her life had so much money herself, and just with her family, with her husband as well, they were able to loan a huge sum of money to the Habsburg Hungarian Empire.
Oh.
So I don't know if Elizabeth herself was a Habsburg, but she, knew the Habsburgs was, not in cahoots necessarily.
Right. She was acquainted.
But they were, but I'm sure they were homies to a degree.
She flew on Epstein's plane a couple of times.
Exactly. Yeah. But because of all of these things, seemingly because of all of these things, she had epilepsy. And a way that epilepsy was treated at the time was that they would take the blood from someone who didn't have epilepsy and they would rub it on the lips of the person that was having a seizure. And then they would also mix up a piece of, I think, a human skull and maybe put that with them until the episode ended. So that is a little bit of a foreshadowing. And that is something that this will come up a lot as we go forward. There are some records of this. Of course, there are actually a lot of records of this.
Right.
But there aren't records of everything. And certain things might have not been recorded and other things might have. Right. So from a young age, she was living with her family in a beautiful castle. And she regularly saw just really intense, brutal beatings of servants there. She didn't really seem to be bothered by it whatsoever. In fact, she kind of seemed, even as a child, to like it.
So she comes from a line of assholes then.
Exactly.
So it's not like they were these benevolent people that just happened to give birth to Satan's spawn.
No.
She comes from a long line of douchebaggery.
It sounds like it. And also, as we mentioned in our royal inbreeding episode, people who reproduce with their cousin, that child often will have issues with rage and anger and lashing out and aggression. So that also makes sense
Could
why
play into,
this family line and many other royal family lines were so aggressive and violent towards each other.
Very interesting.
So at a young age, she would see this and it didn't bother her. And there's even an account that one time she saw someone, this is a lot. This is one of those times. She saw someone being sewn into the body of a horse. Does that make sense?
Right.
And she laughed while watching.
And wasn't it for something? It was literally like.
It was like for. I don't even know if they. I don't know what.
It was. I could be wrong, but it was a rather petty crime. Even if it wasn't petty, it seems hard. Like it'd be justifiable to sew you into a goddamn horse.
Exactly.
But if I remember correctly, it was something rather petty. Wasn't it just like stealing food or?
Right. If it wasn't for that crime, they were very aggressive towards Elizabeth's parents were very aggressive towards their servants all the time, no matter what. So even if it wasn't they sewed them into a horse, they oftentimes would just be beaten or slapped or abused.
Some real Scrooges.
There's also been accounts that maybe certain members of her family had partaken in some sort of satanic rituals that she was privy to or witnessed.
Interesting.
Or maybe some sort of witchcraft or something like that, where she was taught from a very early age something dangerous and very off limits.
Right.
All of these accounts of her, they keep saying, and even in this one video that I watched, that it's like someone that recorded it within the past like 5 years or something, and they're like, everyone was struck how stunningly beautiful she was once she turned 10 years old. And it's like, you know what? Enough, okay? I understand that it was a different time, but we need to stop just calling this girl beautiful when she's 10, like she's ready to be engaged because let's cool it.
Right.
Okay. But that's what happened. And she got engaged to someone older than her. Not like insanely older than her though, actually. I believe he was just 4 or 5 years older than her. They didn't marry until she was 15 years old. But there has been rumor and accounts that maybe she had an affair with a local peasant boy when she was 13, and that she got pregnant and had a baby. That the baby had to be given up to a local woman that they could trust, and that the local peasant boy was castrated by her fiance, and then he was fed to dogs. Yeah.
Jesus God.
So even though she was formally engaged when she was 10, it wasn't until she was 15 that she married her husband, to Count Fernek Nadadzi. You guys, once again, the names are just a mess. For me, not in general. The way I'm saying them are a mess, so my apologies. But she was getting married to Count Fernek, and she said that her social standing was higher than his, much higher than his. Woo. And she said, I will not take his name and he will take my name.
Damn.
So that is exactly what happened. And she was born Elizabeth Bathory, and she got married and stayed Elizabeth Bathory, which is a big deal.
Yeah, so old Fairneck became a Bathory.
So Elizabeth's husband was a member of the military, and he also, before he was off fighting, he was studying, so he actually wasn't home a ton. Oh, and by the way, their home was this absolutely huge castle that Count Fernek gave to Elizabeth. He got it written over into her name and everything. It wasn't just a castle that she lived in. It was literally her castle. So yeah, it's Castle of Setchi, I think.
Interesting.
Really, once again, the name, who could know?
Right.
Lots of people, but not me. So they lived there together. Like I said, they weren't there together often, but when they were there, they bonded over torturing the servants. That is kind of what they like straight up actually would do. So he taught her to roll up oiled pieces of paper, stick them between the toes of their servant girls, and then light them on fire. And he also gifted her with a nailed glove so that she could really bat her servants around and really do some damage. But there's something that was kind of odd about her. There was a war going on called the Long War, and Elizabeth Bathory's husband was away, so she was put in charge of everything.
What was the war?
The Long War.
That's the one, I believe the Long War was the one that Rudolph II from Codex Gigas declared. It was kind of the war that undid him. It was his war against the Ottoman Empire, wasn't that?
Yeah.
So that was, so while the Codex Gigas thing was going on.
Yes, wow.
This, so cool little point to just an unintentional connection we made.
Yes, but so during the Long War, while she was in charge, it was kind of strange because even though she could be so cruel and so evil, she did open up her home for villagers and peasants who were homeless because of this war, and she fed them and she housed them, and she took in a woman who was raped and impregnated by the enemy forces.
Right.
She really it's just kind of odd that she did do something there that actually was good. It's kind of like that stuff with so many serial killers, like Ted Bundy volunteered a lot, like, you know what I mean, like all of them, like, would, even though they do sometimes these good acts, I guess it puts you off the scent.
From what I overheard, it sounds like you know, especially if you were poor, if your child was to be taken on as a servant for the royalty, then you would receive a nice, you know, so it was so a lot of like peasantry was willingly saying, here, of course, you know, they didn't realize that, one, they get money in turn, and two, they would, you know, they would think, oh, well, my child might get a leg up in this world.
Exactly.
Well, no, they're essentially just, you know, it's just sending lambs to the slaughter.
Exactly, yeah.
But yeah, that was the other thing was the peasantry, because of that money, were kind of willing to part with their children.
Yeah, and it took a long time for anyone to notice, and not necessarily.
Right.
I mean, the people that were missing, their families noticed, but they were peasants.
They were all
so it was, maybe lots of people were noticing, but no one was. It took a while for people of power, in a position of power, to notice. They didn't notice quite right away.
And in an age when you can't just text, you know, a daughter can't just text and say, hey, I'm being tortured.
Right.
You know, you say goodbye to your child, you don't see them for a month or two, and if you find out they died, well, you wouldn't know how it happened. They could just say, well, she got sick, or she this or that, or there was an accident.
Exactly. You know. And what Elizabeth Bathory would often say, she claimed there was a bit of a cholera situation going on.
Okay.
And we'll get to that in just a moment. Then in 1601, Elizabeth met a woman named, I believe her name was Anna Devoya, and she was, many people believe her to have been a witch.
Okay.
Elizabeth Bathory and her became close, and it is said that after Elizabeth met her, she became even more evil and even more sadistic, and it turned not just torturing but to killing. And as we said before, she really had like this huge supply of people at first. You know, she has her servants.
Right.
And kind of like we were saying before, a lot of these people, their families might not live close by. They might, you know, live very, very far away where they can't really get in touch, rarely ever in the first place. So they don't necessarily have people looking for them. Maybe sometimes their family is dead, maybe, you know, things like that. Or maybe sometimes the family does live close by, but just communication took so much longer and was so much slower then.
Right.
So it could have taken a long time for a family member or someone to notice that they were missing.
Right.
Also, this kind of started to become a problem for Elizabeth. She's kind of like, fuck, you know, like, I have to rehire all of these people I'm killing.
Right.
You know what I mean? She's like, this is kind of a pain. So she's got that on her mind. But she went forward and kept on killing her servants. There was just so many people. They must have also abducted some peasants, or maybe some little young girls, things like that.
Right.
But she was calling in pastors so often to do burial rites for these people that the pastors were like, what is going on?
What the hell's going on?
Yeah, and it was hard because she was very much in a position of power. She was, like I said, connected in so many different ways, both through blood and also through money and connections. And it's very, very dirty, very grimy.
Right, it's very corrupt. Yeah.
But there was one pastor who did come forward and did try to say something to Elizabeth herself.
Okay.
And this is what we believe he said.
Your Grace should not have acted so because it offends the Lord, and we will be punished if we do not complain to you and criticize your Grace. And in order to confirm that my words are true, we need only exhume the body, and you will find that the marks identify the way in which death occurred.
But she was just like, okay, unbothered, basically. But then, in 1604, her husband, Ferneck, died, leaving Elizabeth a widow at the age of 44. Because of her husband dying and what all of that meant emotionally,
right.
and not only just emotionally of losing your husband, but also she was now in charge of all of these things that she didn't used to have to be responsible for.
She lost her torture buddy.
She lost him.
Buddy.
So she was stressed, and you know what that did? That made her more sadistic. She said, I need to be worse. I need to be nastier. I need to be naughtier. Okay?
Right.
And speaking of it, maybe there was some like sexual situation with her. It seems like she may have received some sort of sexual gratification from this.
From the
torture, but maybe not though. It's not
right.
Entirely clear. So Bathory began torturing and killing her victims in increasingly sadistic, harsh, and cruel ways.
Right.
And I'm going to say some of them right now.
Okay.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
If you're not into it, just skip forward, I would say like 20 seconds. Okay?
Sounds good.
Okay. Apparently, Elizabeth, she would do this herself and then also would have some of her cronies.
She had like a torture team.
To do this for her and with her. She would jam pins and needles underneath the fingernails of servant girls and just on their fingers in general. She was reported to smear girls with honey and then leave them outside to be attacked by ants and bees and wasps and other insects. She also would take hot rods and she would place them all over their bodies, including their genitals. She would oftentimes starve them or deprive them of water, and sometimes she would starve them for so long to the point where they needed to eat something to survive. This is really, really a lot. She had been known to bite off a piece of their flesh, force the victims to cook it, and then eat their own flesh. Stuff that is absolutely abhorrent and so sadistic and disgusting. And we're back. We're going to just talk about it now. We're not going to say exactly. Right. So if you just jumped ahead, we're good.
The level of it's almost, and it feels weird to say it, it's almost the creativity. It's almost,
right. It's
so evil.
I mean, it's like Game of Thrones.
It's cruel. It's just the most.
It is fucking Ramsay Bolton shit.
Yeah, it goes so far beyond just kill. It's
overwhelming that someone like that even could be that way.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of things I didn't even say.
Yeah,
so
there's a lot that's if you really
if you got an iron stomach, feel free to do that. Now, why she did these things is a very interesting question that is up for debate. It has been said throughout the years that Elizabeth Bathory bathed in the blood of virgins or drank virgin blood because she believed that it would keep her young and beautiful. Because if you remember, I said before, everyone was being fucking weird and talking about how beautiful she was when she was 10 years old. So of course she's got a fucking complex about being young and pretty. So she is obsessed with this. And so people often think that is what was happening. But in the original accounts and witness reports that we hear, nothing about that is said. That's kind of comes up as the years go on after the fact. So even though this woman is evil, and it does seem like maybe she did think maybe virgin blood was maybe good to maybe put on her skin, maybe rub on her face, something like that. she wasn't drinking blood and she wasn't
Right.
bathing in blood.
How funny that the one thing she's most known for is maybe the one thing she might not have done.
Exactly.
Everything we know she did was as bad, if not worse.
Right.
I think maybe it's because this whole idea of vanity, I don't know if maybe it's because at least then you would have some sort of a reason. Well, it was her
Exactly.
vanity made her.
Exactly.
Whereas with just plain torture, if
Yeah.
there's no, if we can't accept that someone could just be so blindly cruel, we need to dress it up in something we can understand.
Yeah. Well, not only that, too, but it's also a lot of people think, too, that it's like people couldn't wrap their heads around the fact that a woman could just be so evil and do that for just the sake of it. They thought that there was no way a woman could be capable of doing such a thing without there being like an ulterior motive.
Right. It's not even like these were prisoners of war. Like, it's
right.
not like these, which is obviously also horrible and wrong.
Yeah.
But it's like you hear all the time about, like Vlad and stuff, like, torturing prisoners. These weren't even prisoners of war. These weren't even like criminals.
Right. Right.
It's like this was just about as innocent of a person as you could be, just like a poor young girl from a poor family. Like you couldn't have chosen.
Yes, it sounds so bizarre that it's like that. It's not like that you want to be like, no, women are capable of being absolute heinous serial murderers, but it is true in that way that it's like,
Don't sell yourself short, ladies.
Come on, we can do it, ladies.
Murder that glass ceiling.
Please, let's just like really suck the blood out of the glass ceiling.
Break that glass ceiling and use the shards to murder.
Oh, please, because that is something that a lot of people have attributed Elizabeth Bathory's legend to. As we had kind of said before, she was running out of people that she really was able to torture and kill.
Right.
And so she started targeting lower level young ladies of nobility.
Right.
Families that maybe would be kind of like how you said before about servants, but this is even kind of on a different level. They would be so happy and honored to send their daughter to live in the castle with Elizabeth Bathory to learn about how to live at court and how to behave and, all of that good stuff. But once she started killing and torturing them, people started to notice a little bit more.
Yeah.
And finally, King Matthias II pushed forward the case against her. And eventually there were over 300 witness statements against Elizabeth Bathory.
Yeah. Isn't it ironic, and we've talked about this before, obviously it's good she eventually got caught.
Totally.
But it was a shame that it took killing someone who wasn't just a poor peasant for people to actually notice. Same thing with Leonardo Cianciulli. It was when she killed the opera singer, Virginia,
exactly.
that people
I was just
actually
gonna
started
say that.
to notice. Same thing with the Bloody Benders. It was when they killed that York guy whose brothers were a senator
Yes.
and like someone else important. Mm-hmm. Obviously we're glad these people were eventually stopped, but it's a shame
that it takes
that it
that.
takes someone with a bit of money and a bit of notoriety to get killed for people to actually move their fucking asses.
Right.
We're seeing the same thing in every century. Everything we've just talked about, we're in different centuries, and it was the same moral of the story.
Right. It's really wild. So eventually Elizabeth Bathory was arrested, and often it is said that she was caught red-handed. She was caught while she was killing or torturing someone. And this is kind of half true, because when the officer arrived to arrest her, she was actually having dinner at home, but then while the person was going through the house, he saw a dead girl and then someone that was quote unquote a prey girl, like Prey,
Right.
that she was going to kill,
Oh,
that were still in the house. The man who arrested her, his name is Thurzo, who's actually also a cousin of Elizabeth Bathory, but he kind of embellished what he said, saying Elizabeth Bathory was covered in blood when he found her. So this kind of embellishment led the way for the line to get a little a little messy between truth and legend there. When Elizabeth Bathory was arrested, the man Thurzo who arrested her, he thought that she was going to be put into a nunnery where she would live out the rest of her days there. But the people really would not stand for that. They thought that this was like too intense of a crime for her to be let off so easy.
Right.
Some of the other people that were her accomplices, they were tortured brutally and then they were burned alive.
Wow.
But they spared Elizabeth that because of her familial connections.
Right.
And they wanted to kind of not embarrass the family, you
Right,
know, like
right.
that. But she wasn't allowed to just go live in a nunnery, so she essentially was in house arrest in a room in a castle. 3 years later, she complained that her hands were cold to her guard. He told her to lay down, and then the next time they checked in on her, she had died. She died at the age of 54, and she was originally buried there, but the townspeople didn't want her buried there, so they sent her back to her home to be buried there. And it was thought that she was buried there up until recently when they opened up the Bathory family mausoleum and her remains were not in there. So we're not exactly sure where she is. And we don't know exactly what she did and what she didn't do. Some people even say that they think that this might have been a very elaborate, like, government cover-up type thing.
Huh.
Like they wanted to not government cover up, but more so they wanted to bring down the nobility and to really start conflict
Right.
between them. I don't know if that's true or not.
Right.
It seems like a lot of accounts to be a complete conspiracy theory.
Right.
To me. Also, even if Elizabeth didn't commit every single thing, that she is an absolute monster, one of the
Monster.
worst serial killers I've ever heard of.
One of the worst people to ever live. And didn't one of your stories, didn't they talk about her I don't know, what do you call them, her handmaiden or her right hand, her advisor? Didn't they say she was a witch, or at least people believed she was a witch?
Right, yeah, there were a couple people that Elizabeth was close to that were believed to be witches, and that they really kind of informed her behavior, and that it wasn't just necessarily doing these murders and torturing these girls, not only just for sadistic purposes, but maybe satanic purposes as well.
Ritualistic purposes.
Yeah. And
interesting.
that stuff too is kind of hard to know for sure
Right.
what was going on, but there definitely was it's hard to believe that she was just killing these people just for the sake of killing them. That's why, even though maybe the idea about her vanity was something added on, but maybe it does make sense that she would be so obsessed with her beauty, and she would try anything. And if maybe blood was moisturizing or something, and she felt like it improved her skin, I mean, who knows? Maybe she didn't bathe in it, but who knows? Maybe she did use it to do something to her skin. I don't know.
Wild.
So Elizabeth Bathory is kind of, as we said, always super attributed to doing anything for beauty. But she's not the only one.
That's right.
There are some very, very, very 100% real factual things that human beings have done and still do for beauty that sometimes are deadly. But are they worth it? Ladies and gentlemen, they are. Okay, let's talk about it. Okay, first of all, being pale at all costs, all right? This always upsets me. It's infuriating to me because this is not today. And if it was the beauty standard for today, I would be doing really good. But everyone likes tan now, so here we go. Ancient Greeks and Romans, they worshipped paleness so much that they would kind of put together this combination of mercury and white lead to make their skin appear whiter. As you probably assume, that's really bad for your skin.
Yeah.
Not only would they do that, sometimes they would let their own blood, so they would appear paler. But they were paler because they had just lost a lot of blood, and they probably were very sick and were going to pass out.
Excuse me, Duchess, do you need a cookie?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. They even did it in the 6th century as well, where they would drain some of the blood, and that is not great. But someone who is very, very famous for using that same white makeup formula that we talked about is Elizabeth I, Queen Elizabeth
Yeah.
I. Oh yeah, women used, during the Elizabethan era, women would use a mixture of lead, egg whites, and vinegar, and they would put this on their skin to whiten their faces. Now, Queen Elizabeth I already had this like white, light skin that she was very known for.
I love that 2/3 of those ingredients were very like holistic.
Yes, exactly.
A little
Egg
white
whites
vinegar, some egg whites, and a shitload of lead.
and some lead paint,
Yeah.
bitch. Yeah, I was thinking the same
It's
thing.
like sprinkling a little kale on your asbestos.
Yeah, exactly. That'll do it.
Yeah.
That'll balance it out. So, like I said, Queen Elizabeth was like known for her beautiful white skin.
Right.
But then when she was 29, she got smallpox. She was so upset about having smallpox, not just because it was such a not necessarily death sentence at the time, but pretty close. It was a very serious illness to have.
Right.
But she also did not want the scars that often came with it. In fact, Elizabeth bemoaned,
God's pestilence. Which is better? To have the pox in the hand, or in the face, or in the heart, and kill the whole body?
now if you asked me, I would say that really sounded like a 29-year-old,
Yeah.
you know? And I had to really work at it, okay? Now, she eventually did survive and heal from smallpox, but as she feared, she had a lot of scars from it. And so she just put on more and more and more of this mixture to make her face appear whiter. But what the mixture was actually doing was it was eating away her skin, literally. So, you put the makeup on, it makes your skin worse. So then you need to put more makeup on to cover it being worse. And then it gets even worse because you have more makeup on it. So then you got to put more, you know what I mean? It's that whole
Right.
situation where it just gets worse and worse and worse. And not only was the makeup bad for her skin, but the cleanser that she would use was bad for her skin too. Like you said, it had some good stuff in there, some honey, some rose water, but then it has some mercury in it. And it did leave their skin soft and smooth, but like I said before, it was because it was eating away their skin. So that's why it was soft, Eventually, Queen Elizabeth died at the age of 69. And there were lots of possible causes for her death, but some of her main symptoms were loss of hair, highly fatigued, memory loss, and digestive problems, which are all symptoms of lead poisoning. So another thing that Queen Elizabeth used was belladonna, which are these Belladonna Eye Drops, which make your eyes look big and watery and, seductive, like the enlarged pupil as well, But unfortunately, it's made out of nightshade. It's a deadly toxic plant that you're putting into your eyes. So this could cause lots of issues. It could be even fatal, but oftentimes it would cause blindness. Queen Elizabeth wasn't the only person to use this. This was even popular up into the Victorian era as well. And something the Victorian era really, really kind of perfected was the horrible, painful corset. There were corsets well before the Victorian era,
Right.
But it wasn't really until then that they were able to be super straight-laced corsets. They didn't really have the technology to be able to pull the corsets tight enough until the Victorian era. That is where we get the term straight-laced and loose woman up into this day. Yes, so
I did not realize loose. I guess so. It literally means a loose, as in like her corset's a little loose.
if her corset's loose, then her morals must be as well. Whereas if she's straight-laced, that means she's proper, no funny business, and she's tied up real nice and tight. But there are, I'm sure you know, corsets, they offer a desired waistline, most often the hourglass waistline, which is small waist with larger hips and with the breasts kind of pushed up and just the rib cage kind of smashed in, and then your liver just kind of in your ass, and then your kidneys, one of them's in your stomach and the other one's right up in your like fucking lymph nodes, and then it sucks. Okay, I've had to do this for some plays, and let me tell you, it is trash. And corsets cause a lot of issues, okay? They can cause indigestion, constipation, internal bleeding even. Now, wearing a corset that isn't super tight isn't necessarily a bad thing always. If sometimes a corset can be used to encourage you to have good posture and all that, but if you're really having one of these tight ass corsets, it's not good. Do not do it. In fact, in 1903 there was a 42-year-old woman who died abruptly after she had a seizure. And apparently in her autopsy, they found corset steel in her heart and other places within her body. Ooh. So it was like a razor's edge that would further injure her every time she moved. But okay, it's not just the ladies, okay? Sometimes the fellas kind of put it all on the line. Okay. As well, to do what they gotta do to look good. So you could wear a stiff high collar, okay? You know those things? They're those, basically it sounds exactly what it sounds like. It's just one of those really high collars that's like super starched and white and really stiff that you see like, people, maybe not as, like in the, late 1800s wearing.
Right. So peacocking, huh?
They're peacocking it.
Peacocking.
But the thing is, sometimes they were so stiff that they would kill your ass.
I've got that problem.
That's right. They were nicknamed the Father Killer or the Vatermörder in German. Now for our final item on this list. As we say on other kinds of episodes like this, I'm sure we will come back and do a Deadly Beauty Trends part 2 later.
Because this is just.
So if you have any ideas of topics of Deadly Beauty Trends you want us to cover, let us know. Right. And we'll add it to the next installment. But here is the final Deadly Beauty Trend. For today. Foot binding. Foot binding has a very, very long history going back nearly 1,000 years in China. And there's lots of different ideas of the exact genesis of this movement. Since this custom is so old, it is hard to kind of have a super definitive answer. A general view is that in the 10th century, Emperor Li Yu, he created this beautiful golden lotus, and it was decorated with stones and pearls, and he had a concubine named Yao Niang, and he asked her to bind her feet into the shape of like a crescent moon, or kind of like a lotus, so that she would be able to do this like beautiful, or what he thought to be this beautiful kind of balletic dance. Right. And apparently this dance was so graceful that other people started to imitate her. It started off with kind of upper class women, and then it over time went throughout the classes. Right. The reasoning for feet binding and why it continued is kind of up for debate. Some people feel like it truly was, and I'm not talking about what it was initially, I'm talking about why it continued for so long. Mm-hmm. Some people say that it was to constrict women, literally. So because once their feet were bound, it was very, very painful and difficult to walk. Right. So by binding women's feet, they not only were able to leave their home, but they also were very dependent on other people. They weren't able to do a lot for themselves, so they needed a husband. And they needed the men in their lives. They needed their father. Some of it was also thought just as a way to separate men and women, or boys and girls. And some people have different reasonings for that too. Right. Some people think it was to remind women that they were inferior and they couldn't do as much as boys. Mm-hmm. And some people think it was to ensure chastity, so that it was harder for boys and girls to be together. But then also there was just the aesthetic element of it. Some people just really felt that these very, very dainty small feet were feminine or highly erotic even. Or some people just thought they were beautiful. Right. Now I'm going to say, I'm going to say a little bit about what happens with feet binding. So if you've got a little weak stomach, fast forward like 30 seconds. Right. Okay. So the process had to be started before the arch of the foot had a chance to fully develop, so it was best if this happened when little girls were between the ages of 4 and 9.
Oh,
So this is
that's horrible.
terrible. First, they would soak the feet in warm water, herbs, and animal blood. This would help to soften the foot. Then they would curl the last 4 toes over the sole of the foot, breaking the toes and the arch with force, and then using a binding cloth to tighten the feet. This needed to be tightened and redone often. It was kind of dependent on your class. If you were high class, you would get this done every single day.
Oh.
And if you were lower class, it would be less and less often.
Oh, Jesus.
And so basically their foot would just be folded in half. So they had to really take great care to keep the foot from being infected. Or sometimes they didn't take great care to keep the feet infected on purpose, because when the skin died, or the part of the foot would die, it would become even smaller. So foot binding clearly was a very, very torturous and painful experience.
Right.
And there was an early Chinese feminist named Kui Jin. Once again, so sorry for the names. And she actually went through the process of binding her feet and then unbinding her feet,
Right.
which is another incredibly painful experience, and you only can do that for a short period of time, and
Right.
it still leaves you with, I'm sure, incredible pain and discomfort. She very much felt that women with their bound feet, they were made to be subservient to men, and they were imprisoned indoors. And kind of a lot of through her work, the process of foot binding has ended. And I do not believe, at least that we know of, anyone has their feet bound anymore. So that
thank God
is
for that.
is great. So the stuff that we do, you guys, for beauty is crazy. But you know what? All you got to do for beauty is you just got to be yourself.
That's right.
You got to give us a 5-star review.
That's right.
You got to tell a friend.
That's right.
And you got to keep it real.
And that's going to wrap us up for Elizabeth Bathory and Deadly Beauty Trends. Thank you, Maureen, so much.
Thank you.
Once again, if you'd like to support this show, go to patreon.com/CreepStreetPodcast. Citizens of the Milky Way, my name is Dylan Hackworth.
I'm Maureen Bogey.
Good night and goodbye.